With regard to the status of Gaza, I think this would be the 64 million question. Gaza has been under Ottoman sovereignty from 1517, you know much better though, 1517 until 1917. Then it was part of the British mandate for Palestine. Now, who was the sovereign in the British mandate for Palestine? There are at least 5 opinions on that question. The most common one says that the sovereignty belonged to Britain plus the League of Nations. In 1948, England left. Britain left the area. So who is the sovereign? It was occupied in 1948 by Egypt, but Egypt never annexed Gaza. Egypt ruled Gaza like an occupied territory and later gave them some kind of autonomy, but under occupation. In 1967, it was occupied by Israel. No, it was already also in 56, but Israel gave it back. 1967, occupied by Israel. Israel has not annexed Gaza. So what is now the situation of Gaza? As I said, 64 million question. With $64 million question. It is, some people say it is a, and this is very easy for the lawyers to say, it is an area sui generis, which means a special situation. Others say it is a self-governing territory with certain powers and not with all the powers of a state. But sui generis is the best what we can say, because really nobody knows exactly what it is. From the Gaza, you can go either to Israel or to Egypt. And there is also an agreement of the year 2005 concerning the passage from Egypt into Gaza through the Rafah entrance, and there were specifications how this border should be improved in order that it should be easier to check the people and the goods that are going through. So it was the idea that both Rafah and the Israeli border should be open for the Palestinians. What are our responsibilities? They were mentioned in a very interesting judgment, I think, by the present Supreme Court President, Mrs. Benish. There was a case where the question was whether Israel had to supply electricity to Gaza. The opinion was that since the occupation of Gaza has ended already in the year 2005, Israel does not have a responsibility to supply Gaza with anything, in particular since there is an additional passage to Egypt through Rafah. But nevertheless, the Supreme Court said that since Israel had been in control of Gaza for so many years, it has a moral obligation to help the people in Gaza to get what they needed for their daily life. So this is more or less the situation. Can Gaza be considered an enemy, although it is not a state? This is a very big question. But you know, in international law, we have, it's a little bit technical, I'm sorry. You have what they call international conflicts, and they have been defined in the 1977 Protocol Article 1. And according to this, the laws of international wars could also apply to a situation where an area is not an independent state. Secondly, we have what they call the laws of war that apply to internal conflicts, which is very similar to international law that applies to wars between states. And this is common Article 3 to all the Geneva Conventions, which gives the minimum which applies. Now, in the past, declarations of war did take place. Nowadays, you have wars that break out without any declaration. And I think in this situation, nobody can say that he did not know that there was an armed conflict between Israel and the Hamas. There's no need for a declaration in order that there should be a state of war. first of all, I would not call it a siege, because there is no siege, because they get a lot of goods from Israel, and everybody knows it. And some people who have been in Gaza say there's no shortage of important elements. There was a shortage of cement. Why? Because Israel said, we don't want to send cement into Gaza because it is used by the Hamas in order to build new bunkers. But now they agreed that the cement from the ships that came from Turkey will also go into Gaza, but via the port of Ashdod, and there should be some kind of control by an independent group in Gaza to make sure that the cement reaches the civilian population and not the Hamas. So there is no siege, first of all, and secondly, I think that what Israel is doing now is really the mark. Let me remind you that during the war of 2008, it was on, even during the war, every afternoon for 1 hour and a half, the border was open, no military activity, in order to make it possible for humanitarian assistance to reach Gaza. So we should not forget the good things that Israel has done. I think that the Israelis may control any ship where you have the suspicion that it might go through to Gaza. Not every ship, of course, on the high seas, but only ships that are suspicious. That they carry goods to Gaza which may increase the war capacity of the Hamas. If there is the suspicion that they are carrying arms or personnel in order to help the Hamas, then of course this is a case where the Israeli army may intervene. With regard to other materials, I don't think that they would justify an act against a neutral ship. When you see that the ship intends to go to the Gaza shore, to the Gaza coast, you can start to stop it, and you try to look what's going on there, and you try to persuade it not to go to Gaza. But what I said is that you, with regard to merchant ships, if the merchant ship nevertheless continues its course to Gaza, then you can attack it. But with regard to warships, this is not done. So the question is, what can you do if they do not obey? This is very, very, I should have said, it's not a good provision here, because they only say you can only protest if it is a warship. You can attack it only if you have a problem of self-defense, which means if that ship attacks you. Those who say it is illegal don't say why. They just say it is illegal under international law, full stop. But they don't say why. But as I said earlier, in time of armed conflict, you can search ships even on the high seas. All these conditions that I mentioned have been fulfilled by Israel. I don't have the exact date. I think the last date that I have in mind is January 2009. Israel made the notification to the whole world. So I think that in our situation we have fulfilled the various conditions, and therefore we could say this is a real blockade.